All right, welcome everyone to another Ask Me Anything. I'm glad you can make it here, or you can watch the videos. The last video that we had that I shared on PDA seemed to be the most popular topic, so so glad that resonated with so many of you. Again, this is just a space for advice, inspiration, mentorship, sounding board, someone to still their wobbles. Please feel free to share any new questions if you would like to sign up and haven't yet. There will be the Google form in the YouTube description. As always, my advice is an offering. I'm not an expert, and this is definitely clear with the area of PDA. And I'm so excited to share a couple updates on PDA submitted by someone. Um, yeah, so I'm not an expert. I'm not. Obviously, as always, do the best that we can with what we know now, and when we know better, do better, right? So, that being said, keep what resonates, release what doesn't. And I hope a good amount resonates for you. As always, the more that I know about your situation, the better, the more, very specific. So again, in this kind of a more of a group setting where I'm answering questions, it's more generalized. Even when you get into specifics, it's not like the person that's asking the question is not always here one-on-one to say, well, th we've tried that already, or, oh, I see what you're saying, but what about this? So one-on-one coaching, again, if you're ever interested, that is something where it can be like way more personalized than you might even understand. Um, yeah, but I hope this is helpful for, a broader audience. Feel free to invite anyone that may benefit from this. And yep, that's pretty much it. So to jump into an update, I had someone that reached out, Alana, and she had some really good things to add from her experience parenting a PDAer. Some of the things I touched upon, and she goes a little deeper on, and then other things she just completely adds. So again, thank you so much, Alana. So I'm going to share that first. Um, and this was her, yeah, most of her message. PDAers are incredibly perceptive, so doing all that inner deschooling work yourself is super important with these kids. They can sniff a hidden agenda from a mile away. On the topic of co-regulation, these kids need almost constant co-regulation, so finding ways to regulate yourself while in the thick of it is important. Find environments and activities that can be mutually fulfilling. Consider doing your own breath work, somatic work, etc. Considering ways to outsource some of the so consider ways to outsource some of the co-regulation so you're not the only one doing it. So for example, pets, other humans, online play with other kids, etc. So that you can kind of keep your bucket somewhat full, keep your cup somewhat full. Um, Connection and felt safety is even more foundational with these kids. Without it, you're going nowhere. And again, I'm just reminded how much PDA kind of all of these things are important with all children, but the very specific case of the PDA profile, and again, broad range here, I get it, just puts a microscope over what is needed, because for PDAers, they have very specific needs in this area, or in these areas. Moving away from looking for products of learning, the sort of thing people keep in a portfolio, to other ways of observing learning may really help. Some PDAers are creators and may produce things you can save and show to others. Other PDAers really don't. And then so Alana added another point to this. For parents living in places where they are required to keep a portfolio as part of their home ed requirements, it's my state, I recommend upskilling in how to produce learning stories like a good ECE teacher, early childhood education teacher, knows how to do. Incorporate photos and notes you've jotted down with your observations and quotes from meaningful conversations. So again, this feels a lot like the reverse planning. What happened during the day? Maybe you're documenting it, maybe you're taking pictures, and then at the end of the day, you're taking notes of like, hey, we covered these things. And if you are thinking about a portfolio, maybe you're captioning the pictures. Maybe you're putting them into a portfolio and saying, hey, this was accomplished today. Yeah, totally agree with that. And so one thing I wanted to share, because Alana was saying that she wasn't fully clear on what I was saying about invisible or visible learning, is 100% I agree with what Alana is saying. My argument is that most learning is invisible for all children, and for all humans. Most learning is invisible. You don't see it. And it doesn't have a product. But this is likely even more so true with PDA learners. So we're, again, Alana and I definitely on the same page. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that. What that means is it's trickier. It's trickier because you don't see the learning. It gives the parents a lot more, maybe a little bit more anxiety in terms of I'm not seeing progress or, what have you. So, yeah, what Alana was saying rings all the more true. How can you find the learning and how can you fit it into the subjects if you need to? And whether that's for yourself or whether that's for a portfolio, for your location that, you need for homeschooling or what have you. Um, and I remember in the last video, I shared a couple links again on how to for example, what is my unschooler learning when? And it's a Facebook group. You share a picture or a description, and then people will list all of the areas that you're hitting upon. Even if it's your unschooler on Roblox, or if it's your young person outside in the mud, or jumping on the couch for the fifth time today. It's always good to kind of see that again. I love what Alana said from a kind of early childhood education teacher perspective to see that is really helpful. Um, Again, a couple more things from Alana. A key distinction between neurodivergence with demand avoidance, and that's just demand avoidance, versus PDA, pathological demand avoidance, or pervasive drive for autonomy, is that a PDAer's cumulative activation interferes with basic survival needs. I think this is a super important point that Elena's hitting home. So too many demands doesn't just equal that they can't do the thing. It may actually mean that they can't do other things. They can't eat, they can't sleep, they can't bathe, use the toilet, or keep their bodies safe. Great point. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. Yep. All right. So again, thank you for that. And as always, if you have anything that you want to add, feel free to comment. Feel free to send me an email or pop on live. I would love to see you here. Today, what I want to dig into um, is the next question. The next question is, what arises when parents aren't aligned, and is there any advice or thoughts on how to work through this? And then there was kind of two questions along this. How to best help partners understand unschooling. And I love this question. I think this is very generalizable. I think a lot of people have this. And even if you're not like, well, that bugs me, I think everybody is kind of on a different level. Even if you're all moving in the same direction, which is like hopefully you are, you and your partner or yeah, you and your partner or you and your care team are all kind of moving in the same direction in terms of things like understanding self-directed education, deschooling, asking questions, staying curious. I think everybody kind of has a little bit of a different level. Um, that they're at. The problem is when you're at kind of deschooling, kind of right here, not to say that there's an end, but your partner's kind of here. And then it's like, well, there's a big disconnect. And how am I going to make all of this progress or live the life that I learned, makes sense and is more humanity affirming that would be up here when my partner can only agree on what's down here. Um, and it almost seems like you're going backwards, or something like that. So again, this sounds a lot like from the questions, it sounds a lot like, how do I get my partner on board? Again, I've heard this a lot. And if for a lot of the clients that come to me for coaching, if they don't expressly state how do I get my partner on board, often it comes up. Um, it comes up just in conversation. Okay. So if I'm wrong about kind of figuring out what that question or one of those two questions meant, I apologize, let me know. But I think this is helpful for a lot of people. As always, more info would be helpful, as I said, but I'll answer what I can. A great starting point, and I always say this, Blake Boles, I don't think he is the perfect unschooling advice person, but I do think that he has great recommendations in his book, Why Are You Still Sending Your Kids to School? I love this book. It's really comprehensive. It's got a wide breadth of understanding of like just, hey, why are you sending your kids to school? What are the other possibilities? What do you value? What does the science say? What does the science not say? And I think he does a good job in this book. The book, not crazy long, but if you have a partner that is not interested in reading, like a 150, 200-page book, there is an abridged audiobook. It's pay what you can, like hooray, Blake Boles. And I will share a link in the description, the YouTube description. But abridged audiobook, it's like an hour and a half, and hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And it hits upon all the important points. It doesn't have the footnotes of like all the science and whatnot, but it's all there. I apologize. 2.5 hours. Okay. But still, 2.5 hours compared to like as an audiobook compared to sitting in front of a nonfiction book can be painful for some people. So maybe an audiobook is easier. You read it on the way to, or you listen on the way to work. Usually the case is it's a busy husband, right? Because most homeschooling parents are the mother. It's the mother that's kind of, the primary caregiver, primary educator, if you will, facilitator. I think 2.5 hours for me is a reasonable request to ask of your partner. You're like, hey, we don't see eye to eye on things. I'm not looking to perfectly see eye to eye, but I want you to understand my side. Will you promise to make it through this 2.5 hour book? And then we can talk. And afterwards, I'm not looking for you to apologize or anything like that. I just want to talk and see where you are, what you understood, what you disagreed with. And then I think that's a helpful starting point. Um, yeah, and the book does have like it goes from like kind of a schoolish lens, which is nice, and then it teases and starts to bring in the deschooling side and its questions and whatnot. And if you're doing this with your partner, if your partner's doing this, you should listen to 100%. Um, and if your partner's not listening to this, maybe you should just listen to this, and then you'll have the talking points that you might want. Um, okay. Aside from that. How can we coerce a partner into a life that prioritizes consent? Yeah. How do you coerce a partner into a life that prioritizes consent? So, often the opposite of coercion this feels like the opposite. Right. Unschooling is often the opposite of coercion. Sure, we have things like nudging and why don't you try this? And we strew things, again, depending on our young people in our family. And I know you want to quit now, but you have friends there and you've told me how much you like this and it took a lot of time to get in this, or we put money into this. There's a conversation, there might be nudging. Um, but coercing a partner into something when unschooling itself or self-directed education itself is like kind of based on consent. Um, it's a quandary. Um, so this again, if we're thinking about the difference in you and your partner, in kind of deeper delving into an understanding, a worldview, deschooling, etc. This worldview type change takes time. Okay. It's sometimes incremental in change and sometimes glacial in change. And you can do your best to nudge, but you have to be reflective and responsive to what your partner is saying or not saying. Um, and that's tricky. So there is the possibility that you can be where you are, wherever you are on your path, and understand where you are and understand what your bottom line needs are and what your wants are, which might be completely separate from each other. Like this is literally what I need. And then I have such high hopes for what I want. Recognize the difference there and release the urgency to accomplish everything that you want to do. Um, Even when it's so clear and it's so laid out and it's so in front of you, um, that's hard too. And I know that. All right. Um, yeah. So how much are you as the caretaker, um, how much are you as the caretaker in charge of the education side of things? Okay. This is an interesting talking point. Um, because I think I want to validate you in this moment. Because it can feel, let's say, you are the caretaker, you've always been in charge of diapers, you've always been in charge of the meals for your young people, you've always been in charge of getting them out of the house and being active and any, special events that are coming up and doctor's visits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Play dates. That's a lot to take on as one person. So when you are have the responsibility to do all of that without question, sometimes without help, you want the autonomy to do it the way you want, right? In the same way that, again, this is kind of stereotypical um, imagining of a household, that let's say your husband has their job, it's kind of their domain, whether they do it at home or whether they do it like, out of the house somewhere. Um, it's largely their domain. You don't really have a say in what they do, or how they do it. And in fact, you want them to have an autonomy to do the things how they want to do and they think is correct to do. Even if you had a conversation, you're like, oh, I disagree with that one. You wouldn't, I would be hard pressed to push my partner to do things differently in their job. Um, Yeah. So it can feel unfair to have a partner that has deep concerns or feel micromanagey type questions about our own work. Um, Yeah, that feels unfair, right? We want the autonomy to do what we feel is right with the things that we are responsible, as I said. We don't want to be hamstrung in the things that we're trying to accomplish, all of which is especially valued in self-directed education. Autonomy, um, self-directedness, the agency to do what we want. So again, just validation. I hear you. I hear you. I do. Um, that being said, as we think about the different levels of ourselves and our partners, um, we want to look for kind of what I would say is the common denominator. Figure out where you agree first. That means conversations, that means talking, having, what is the relationship? What do you agree with about raising your young people, about education? Um, and that might be starting with like, we want the best education for our young people. That's a great place to start. And then explain that, describe that, define that. And maybe at this point, it's more of a listening activity because when you listen to your partner, you're just maybe taking notes or mental notes and you're like, okay, hey, I 100% agree with this. And so we actually agree with a lot more than we disagree on in the terms of education. It's just that we see them playing out in different ways. Going back to like kind of my last point is maybe a little bit of that nudging is like, can you give me some autonomy? And now that I'm thinking about it, sociocracy kind of works really well here because I'm going to pull something up because I'm learning more and more about sociocracy. But sociocracy um, is governance by people that do things together. Okay. So whoever is in charge of something, they get to make the choices on that something, right? And we use this in my household. Like whoever feeds the dog gets to decide when the dog is fed, Or yeah, so many different examples. But the thing that I want to say is that the range of tolerance, right? Good enough for now, safe enough to try. If you can adopt this mindset, say, hey, look, I know we disagree on how our children will be best set for success in life in terms of education. But can we try this out for a time period and then we can reassess? Is it safe enough to try for now? And then we can look at it again and then continue this conversation because we're not making this choice forever. And in fact, unschooling isn't forever. I mean, you ask many of the families that have unschooled and then gone back to school and then popped out again or stayed through college and had a young person that like definitely went into a professional type area. Um, so it's not always going to look like homeschooling. Um, it can look in so many different ways. So is there a way that you can reach that? Can we try this for now? Can we try this for now and then touch base in terms of what's working, what's not working, tweak, and then constantly try to move? And again with sociocracy, you're not shooting for the overlap of everybody's preference of what everybody specifically wants. You're looking for the overlap of what people, again, you and your partner in this case, or you and, other caretakers can agree on like, yeah, let's give it a try. We can try that, or that's okay. I'll consent to that happening now. It might not be your first or second or third choice, but can you kind of make a concession and agree like, yeah, let's try this out. Okay. A little bit of a tangent there, but I think sociocracy just the more that I learn about it, the more that it pops up. Um, Yeah, I think bringing up, for example, like the worst case scenario, um, what is the worst case scenario in terms of what we're doing with our children? Um, and if you have to stay again at the common denominator, again, it just depends on your family, your partner, how the relationship is, what is working, what is visible, uh, what is invisible, but you have data on, things like that. Maybe your household is like hovering at the school at home type area, or school even. We're at school but questioning, and your partner's not questioning and you're really questioning. Um, Hovering where you currently are and or even like a step ahead, trying to say, hey, let's try this thing out, and hovering there until more proof allows that to be kind of become a little bit more permanent, or allowing the limits to be pushed again. Yeah, providing the evidence when possible. And like I said before, consider your urgency in this matter, your urgency around this progress, because even if you know where you should be, um, it's going to take time, right? And that's going to play out differently in the picture of your familial relationships. And I'm going to add to that too, when you're like, I've read all the books, I've listened to all the podcasts, I know that our unschooling has to take us here. You're going to find out that it's going to take you here, or here, or here. Um, so be flexible, be open to the possibilities, and try not to shoot so hard for exactly what the way you think it should look, because there is no exact way. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. One of the best things about self-directed education is slowing down. Um, and I think that can be true for our progress as well. Um, yeah. I think that's pretty much all I have to say on, how to help your partner understand unschooling, how to get your partner on board. What I can say is that a lot of people have talked about this because this is a popular question. So, looking this up in podcasts, or on YouTube videos, or, your favorite blog and things like that. I think you'll hear a lot of different opinions on this, and there might be some things that, like some takeaways for you, specifically for your family's, situation and circumstances. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So today we just covered basically really awesome update on PDA and then how to get my partner on board. Um, any questions, please leave a comment, please email me. I love doing these. And again, next Thursday, I'll post another video, and hopefully I'll see a few of you there. All right, see you all.